everyone to imagine playing in the World Cup, the world's most watched event. Tens of thousands of people screaming in the stands. That multiple millions of people are watching, as was explained earlier. Imagine playing as a goalie and trying to keep track of 11 of the greatest players on the planet playing soccer. Now imagine trying to make a save or trying to punch the ball clear with the ball coming at you, but not having control or losing control temporarily of one of your limbs, possibly a twitch of some sort. This would be an absolutely nightmare scenario for most of us, but it's become an everyday regularity for American goalkeeper Tim Howard, my favorite player. He's one of the main reasons that I got into the sport. He's represented our country over 100 times, including the 2 most recent World Cups. He's an incredible American soccer legend whose story needs to be told. In this brief speech, I would like to tell you about Tim's incredible experience with Tourette's syndrome, his subsequent charitable work, his personal accomplishments, as well as his remarkable physical and mental strength. First, about his diagnosis. He was diagnosed in the 6th grade as a child, when his mother noticed some obsessive-compulsive tendencies that he had, such as if he was given a piece of paper, he would count how many lines there were. If he was walking, he would have to count how many steps he used. This became a problem, so much so that they had to take him to the doctor and he got checked out, and then they officially confirmed it at age 11. Kids can be pretty mean at this age in middle school, so while some derogatory terms were used, Tim says that sports made him pretty popular, and he was always a pretty big kid, so bullying was never really an issue. He says in a recent, in a 2013 edition of Neurology Now, that from ages 9 to 15, it was just a chaos of different tics. They were pretty strong. Just as I figured out one, another one would hit me. Now this is the most interesting part of his disorder, is that on the field, it barely bothers him. He says in another interview at MLSsoccer.com, on the field, I wasn't Tim who had TS or Tim who had tics. I was just Tim who scored goals or scored baskets or hit home runs. Dr. Donald Gilbert, Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Neurology at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, says that if you're focused at a practice task, like being a goalie, like practicing stopping shots, that will override your circuits so that you don't tick. And I think that's pretty remarkable. In fact, I experienced Tim, he says that on multiple occasions, his syndrome is actually the worst when he's nervous. So the 24 hours prior to a game, instead of actually the 90 minutes of the game, is actually the worst part. All of these experiences have made him really nice, and have actually made him very charitable. So he'll go to different charities, both here in the US and over in England, where he plays. He actually won a 2001 award for Humanitarian of the Year award for our local league in MLS in the US for his work in creating awareness for TS. To recap, he was diagnosed as a child, sports helped him cope, and now he helps kids in similar situations. Next are his personal accomplishments. As a student, he excelled as well, obviously in soccer, but also in basketball. In fact, his senior year of high school, his team won the New Jersey State Championship, but he was also recruited, obviously, for soccer, and he was a standout prospect. At the age of 15, he made his international debut against Honduras, and he's been impressing ever since. He spent 7 years here after high school, playing in MLS before he was picked up by Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world, especially at that time. He was the first American to play for Manchester United, and he was the 2004 goalkeeper of the year for the entire league, widely regarded as the best league in the world, and that was his rookie year. In 2007, he moved to a smaller club named Everton, where he's become an absolute hero. He started 210 games in a row, using gloves very similar to these, which is why I got them. And recently he became one of 4 goalkeepers in the Premier League to score a goal during the game, sent a clearance from his own box, and made it into the opposing net. For his overall efforts, he's also received awards for U.S. Soccer Athlete of the Year, 2-time MLS All-Star, and he's been named in the top 10 goalies of the year 3 times running. Lastly, I'd like to talk about his physical and mental strength. So, in reference to his mental strength, the English media is notorious in the soccer community for being very cruel and very rude towards players. He was initially called retarded, he was called disabled, and he handled that all with incredible grace. He just said that they were ignorant and that they needed to learn more about his disease before they jumped to conclusions. The rival fans would mock him. They would make terrible songs about him, things I can't repeat, obviously, during the speech. And he's actually one of the most humble athletes as well, which contributes to his mental strength. That goal that I was talking about, one of the only 4 goalies to ever score, after that goal, he refused to celebrate out of respect for the other goalie, because he said that that had happened to him previously, that he had been scored on by the other goalie, and he knows that that's a terrible thing. He doesn't want to celebrate that fact. Thanks. Physically, he's dealt with a lot, especially dealing with Tourette's. People usually don't think about the physical ailments of Tourette's, they just think of the tics and the things that people do. But for instance, he would have all sorts of terrible migraines due to the neck twitches, neck cramps, things like that. And in addition to that, he sustained multiple injuries in game and has continued to play on. In fact, he had a broken finger in a game against Brazil, and he continued to play an hour after that. In 2013, I actually have a picture of this. He played with 2 broken bones in his back. If you can tell, this is from roughly 7.5 feet. He fell straight down on his back, shattered one of them, and then fractured another bone, which I think is just incredible. He ended up playing through that game as well. Overall, these mental and physical strengths show that Tim Howard is truly an elite player. So in conclusion, he's handled everything with grace and humility, and Tourette's, the media, and if you combine that with his personal accomplishments, his mental and physical fortitude, then you should really remember him this summer when he's in the World Cup. I hope that you remember his speech, remember his diagnosis, and appreciate his contributions even more.